Coyotes, something interesting. So when
Yes,
European
please.
settlers first arrived here, I think there were only coyotes in a handful of states in the USA. And as man basically started trapping them and shooting them and killing them, what happens is they've got a very unique structure. And you have an alpha pair, which means you've got a pair that's very strong, male and a female. They breed and they will push everything away. The area is ridiculous. It's something like, sort of 2 or 3 thousand square miles that this alpha pair will basically hunt in and dominate and take care of. And all these other ones get pushed out. So you had very few coyotes, but the more you kill these alpha pairs, the more the new ones that come through breed, and you don't have these alpha pairs. So you've got more and more and more concentrated. So you got those pairs, you've got bigger packs, you've got packs of 3, 4 at a time. Slowly but surely trying to establish an alpha pair. And I know it's very hard to do. And, I know a lot of farmers, but it almost needs a 5 to 10 year reset where you just say none of these things are going to be hunted and just leave them and let them establish those alpha pairs again and push everything out. Same thing happens with foxes. Same things happen with jackal in South Africa. Sheep farmers curse, small cattle farmers curse also.
Well, I don't think that we have farmers here in the Bel Air Hills, but we do have the coyotes.
You do.
We may have back in the day, we had the orchards and stuff like that. Not here in the hills, but again, it's a different problem to have. But do tell me more about fox hunting. Do they still hunt foxes? Because I know people, even in London, that will be more than happy to go and hunt foxes, especially because of the noises that they make at night.
I hear you. I think it's technically illegal, but as far as to hunt them on horseback. So the way the British used to do it was get on horses, chase them with a pack of hounds, and then the hounds would kind of tear it apart, and the main guy would come and kind of kill the fox with a knife or something. But I think you're still allowed to hunt them with rifles in the UK, certainly in rural areas where, you've got people relying on chicken farming and people relying on, sort of pheasants and the like. But I'll tell you something interesting. Again, we're going way off our normal subject here, but I lived in South Africa pretty much my whole life, or in Africa, and I moved into the UK for the first time in 2011. And I had a dog with me that was 3 years old. It was a young Jack Russell that had only lived in South Africa. Its parents were from South Africa, blah, blah, blah. And I was walking across the road, just off the King's Road. At about 6 o'clock in the morning, I took my dog for a walk. And across the road, coming from the other way, was a big red fox. And they stopped and looked at each other in the road. And my dog took after the red fox. A small Jack Russell, he chased him across the King's Road, all the way up to South Kensington. I just heard him barking. He knew he had to hate that animal. Somehow deeply ingrained in our psyche is the fox. And I don't know if it's because of the noise or the fact that they kill chickens and kill livestock, but it's unfortunately almost the equivalent of the devil in the UK.
Well, we can dive that, and then we'll need to open Google to actually check facts on most of those things. But we're here to talk about insurance, and especially your company. Rob, how about you'll give us a quick introduction? What do you do?
So I came from very much from an insurance carrier background. I was very much an insurance man, 8th generation in insurance in my family.
8th generation?
8th generation, many years of insurance. And originally started off, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was in the dynamite industry. They used to import dynamite into South Africa for the mines. They couldn't get insurance, so the only way to get insurance was to get together with other dynamite transporters and create their own insurance company, to the point where they created a Lloyd syndicate, and that was where it all started. So initially from dynamite production or dynamite sales to insurance. And then we kind of we've stayed in that industry for a very long time. My brother and I bought an insurance company in a place called Mozambique 25 odd years ago. And we struggled to find good insurance software. There was nothing around at that stage. So we brought in a young guy. We built our own software, put it into a separate company. And 25 years later, I've ended up in the insurance software business full-time, whereas before I was just an investor, and I was on the board of that company, and founder and investor. Obviously brought that software from South Africa and the UK into the United States, and that's Intx. It's policy administration and core systems and reinsurance systems is what we build and provide. We got a very, very versatile product in terms of being written on very modern technology. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we've adapted that software for the US market, rewritten every single line of code. There was over 1 million lines of code that we've rewritten. It's written on Microsoft SQL platform, C# and Blazor front and back. And basically very, very scalable, adaptable, and configurable software, able to go into everything from an MGA or a small captive all the way up to, very large tier one carriers if required.
C#. I didn't know that people still use that. I'm not criticizing. I'm just, everyone nowadays is like, we are using, actually, between, even Java sounds a little bit old, come to think about it. Everyone nowadays, it's scripting with Python and stuff like that. So I'm actually very curious. Why C#? Is that part of the Microsoft domain?
It's part
Was
of the
that the
Microsoft
motivation?
domain, and exactly what our thoughts were. So one of the biggest issues now is that if you look at a lot of the legacy providers, what they've done is they've written the software code in their own proprietary software. So if you want to work for XYZ policy administration software company, you have to be able to write in their code specifically. To find people to write in that code is not easy because obviously they need to be trained and, they need to go through a process. The very vast majority of these legacy providers' employees work in places like India, China, etc. So if there was a change politically with regards to having developers sitting outside the country, what would happen is it would make it very complicated to be able to try and get software developers that write that specific proprietary code in the United States. So the process we went through was to ensure that we've got access to developers at quick notice and that we can develop them and upskill them very, very quickly, having the Microsoft platform as a background. Obviously, the insurance side is something that we've got to focus on, but that was the thought process behind it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I've seen, especially most of the insurance companies would not ask about which code or which development language are you using and what that actually means. Part of them still trying to figure out, what type of a wrapper we're going to put around the COBOL that we still need to run somewhere on one of the IBM mainframes. But most of them shifted. So not to be too criticized or negative or anything like that, right? But at the same time, you'll have, I don't know how I feel about different flavors of JavaScript when it comes to core system, right? It's great for apps, web apps development and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for a core system, I would look into something that is a little bit more, how can I say that? Confident, maybe? Something that you can actually compile and run it. But
correct.
Yeah, no, it's...
Remember, this is just the front end. This is the side that you're accessing. Look, the user experience. That's it. I do, I understand what you're saying, but interesting enough, in fact, you are the first person to really question me on this, bizarrely, over the last 3 to 4 years. No one's ever asked.
From time to time, I still go like, oh yeah, I used to be an engineer. And once you talked about it, I had to ask. It's like, it's not that I'm trying to...
It's good. No, I like it. I'm happy. No, I've got absolutely no problem. Very happy. I appreciate you asking that. It's good that you ask.
No, because those are, when it comes, you have your process, and we'll be more than happy to talk more and more about your, the product, how, from Mozambique and to London, and then not just carriers, the reinsurance, and then, discovering America and talking about, coming from Africa, which is a continent, and people had the tendency to forget that Africa is huge and so different to not just North Africa, South Africa, and Middle Africa, and West, East. Just Nigeria itself is as big in terms of population, bigger population-wise than the US. And so many different things, right? And then compare it to Ethiopia or Eritrea, that's
cool.
Completely different. But insurance. No, we talk engineering, but let's continue with insurance. So core system. You started with the carrier Mozambique. You started heading towards London. You had your syndicate. We talked about reinsurance. What is the product that you offer the reinsurance?
Sorry, just say that again. What is the product that
you offer the reinsurers?
Oh, that we offer the reinsurance. So we've got basically both forms of reinsurance. So both your seeded product. So if you're a carrier that is writing specialty business, call it oil and gas, call it marine, aviation, and you're buying a lot of reinsurance, what we do is we provide the software that manages your treaty or your facultative reinsurance contracts, treaties, manages everything all the way from the initial placement. So once you place that, or you created your treaty, once you placed your policy in the beginning, once you write that policy, what will happen is it'll automatically allocate the reinsurance for you. Again, manage the entire process with regards to calculating how much you got to pay to reinsurers, how much commissions you get, how much sliding scale, and it can be proportional, non-proportional. You've got all sorts of different structures, layers, loss corridors. So it can get very complex. And believe it or not, reinsurance accounting is a hell of a difficult, laborious, and boring job for any accountant. If their job is tough and repetitive before, is not pleasant. It is hard to hang on to reinsurance accountants. So taking on that software basically frees them up to do a lot more, because all of that is automatically calculated all the way through. Again, if you write something and your reinsurance treaty cannot handle it, it's too big for your reinsurance treaty, what it'll force you to do is buy facultative reinsurance. So again, managing that process. And it's a lot more complex than what I'm just saying here between those few items. Then going all the way back to having a claim. The minute you have a claim, automatically interfaces to your claim system, calculates what portion is your treaty, what portion goes into your facultative side, how that affects your profit commissions, how that affects any commission, what it does to your different layers of insurance. Or do you need a reinstatement, on your reinsurance, depending on what type of policy you have? So all of this it's a lot more complex than you would imagine, but there's a lot to managing that process. Then at the same time, we also have an assumed reinsurance product, which is reinsurance software for reinsurers. So reinsurers that are writing business in the market, we also have what we pretty much call a core system for a reinsurance company that would write it all the way through. Again, managing treaties, managing facultative placements, managing the commissions that go around that, managing different loss corridors, the retrocessions of the reinsurance. So the reinsurance that reinsurers buy, how is that managed? What does that treaty look like? What does that process look like for the reinsurer? So all of that is pretty much what we've done. And I believe we're fairly unique in this market, and that there's not many others doing that. And really sort of, making the inroads that we've started making in that industry.
I find it fascinating. Not the accounting part, but also the accounting part. I'm not sure it's fascinating, but more about curious, because I'm less familiar with that space. And because that, I think that the reinsurance and that relationship with the carrier and later on to the capital market, this is kind of the thing where big money exists. And that's why I feel more intrigued by that. And that's also how we close the loop and open it via ILSs or other ways, or other securitize the assets and connect it back to the policyholders, that they invest in it knowingly or not knowingly via different pension funds, or or directly if they buy it. Although I don't see them buying ILSs directly. No, that's actually very interesting. That should have been I should have asked that more about what differentiates you from the other core system providers, and you'll say, oh, we have the reinsurance, but we went the other way.
Well, it's not just the reinsurance. I do think one of the things that we've got is, as I mentioned, we're not written on proprietary software. We're super flexible in terms of what we're able to provide as a product. And I think one of the most important things is that we provide a seamless integration right the way across the policy lifecycle. So right from the initial contact with the broker, be that a broker portal, which is why you need C# to be able to access. But anyway, that initial broker portal or client portal, coming in all the way through rating, underwriting, policy issuance, the billing, managing the payments, the allocation of reinsurance, the allocation of reserves, your compulsory regulatory reserves, IBNR, etc., the management of the claims, the management of the regulatory filings. All of these things need to be one seamless integration. I just cannot I cannot comprehend or believe any company can run a separate claim system separate to their underwriting system, because it all has to go into a data lake, then be extracted. I mean, the possibility of things going wrong. I'm going to drop something quite big with you. I think I might have spoken to you about this when we first met, but we've just finished. We undertook a study with RSM. I haven't actually spoken to anyone else about this, but one of the things that popped up in that, and I'm very happy to share this with you, is that they interviewed 250 insurance professionals. And of those 250 guys, there were guys pretty much in everything from MGAs all the way up to tier one carriers. One of the interesting things that 55 of the people who took part in that survey, 55% still run Excel spreadsheets as their core system. And I mean, it's at first, I thought, I can't believe this, and I understand why now 100%, because it actually is very useful and strong. It's just not auditable, and it's also can be altered and changed. Formulas can be changed in that, but it's a powerful product, and I understand exactly why these guys have done it, and I think it's out of frustration of working with systems that are very clunky and trying to extract data. If you're trying to run an AI model, you're not going to be able to do it on some software that doesn't give you accurate, information across the value chain of an insurance, policy. I think there's still a lot to be done in the industry. I think there's a lot of opportunity still out there, but I just think it's not going to happen unless you're running seamless systems.
So, you're talking about the Excel sheet users, and I'm thinking about. I'm sorry, I'm still on the reinsurance. I'm thinking about all the folks from Aon and Gallagher Re and Willis Re is now Gallagher. Yeah. How do they operate? Because when they find you the treaties or capacity, they take quite a big chunk. Their fees are not cheap.
Sure, they're cheap. Their fees aren't cheap, but I think a lot of them on the broker side, believe it or not, I think there's not bad software on that side, but I still think that they are frustrated. Certainly, we've had some interesting conversations in recent weeks with certain, reinsurance brokers. Some of the names that you mentioned, we've had conversations with guys there, and I think they are fairly frustrated with the lack of software in the market at the moment. So what it does is just creates a massive amount of manual processes, hence the reason why they are earning those large fees. And obviously, it's not always easy finding this reinsurance all over the world. But at the same time, I do think that they do run fairly good software for themselves, as brokers.
Yeah. Well, again, my job here, my day job is to be a financial wingman. Here is just to say, and here's the setup for you to give a great answer. Okay, let's go back and talk about carriers. So we started with carriers, we went to the reinsurance, now we are back, and you are based in Austin, which apparently all the cool core system CEOs and founders, now they live in Austin. We'll give a shout out to your competitors, Socotra, Dan Woods, and there is the other guy. I forgot the name of them. I know that they're still there. And I saw their booth at ITC, and I completely forgot their name now, which is a little bit unprofessional from my side.
I can't tell you, and to be brutally honest, until I met you, I didn't realize that Socotra were headquartered here. I thought they were more Silicon Valley headquartered.
No. The HQ is in San Francisco. Dan lives in Austin. So
I see. Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are also. Are you also HQ'd in Austin?
Yeah, we HQ'd here in Austin. The team works together. Everyone, you've got to live here to keep these young guys, to keep up with these young guys. They run quickly. I'd get left behind if I lived here and they lived somewhere else, I'm afraid.
And then there is the folks in London, in Stenda. So that will be, let's call it, your cohort, your peers of the new challenging. But before we jump, how you guys are different? There is a big gap. Must be a very good reason beside the fact, I built a few insurance companies and I built software for myself and then leveraged it up and then came to America. How's your offers different than all the Guidewire, Duck, Majesco, let's call it the aging guard?
Yeah.
They're not old, they're just aging.
Yeah, they're aging. They, there's obviously, I think, as I mentioned before, I think the siloed approach of, one outfit doing, underwriting, another one doing claims that's can't last. I think also the costs have run away for carriers. An implementation is so incredibly painful, not just from a cost perspective. It is very painful from a cost perspective. It can run into millions, but also just from a time and distraction of management perspective, to sit there and do these implementations using third-party integrators who battle to understand insurance is very difficult. We use our own internal team. They understand insurance. They understand what you're looking for as a client when you're a carrier, and they understand what the software is capable of. They understand terminology. They understand processes. So I think that's very important, and we specifically built our team around insurance knowledge and ability, as well as the software side. Then I think the other side is where we come in on the economic side. A typical integration, as I mentioned, can run into millions. We're coming in with zero implementation costs at this stage, purely because we've got the internal team that does it. Again, written on Microsoft software, which is user-friendly and able to be adapted and configured to what a client wants very easily. Not always easily. Obviously, there's always a process, but we absorb that upfront cost. And if you're an MGA, you come to the market, you're very capital conscious. Again, it's something that's, useful. And again, carriers that may have been burnt, by going in with the wrong system and possibly doesn't fit them, but feel that they need to make a move and don't really want to be bogged down with those heavy upfront costs. Again, it's quite an aggressive stance from us, but certainly something that we're living with and very happy with so far.
Cool. What can I say? Yeah, no, done. Okay, listen, I met carriers that used, again, one of the more established ecosystem, and they spent millions, tens of millions, and they never understood how come that project never ends. And I usually define it as, well, you need to jump from one racing train to another racing train and figure that out. And they were just bleeding so much money on integration, and most of it because it's like, here is a certain product and now go do it yourself. And then they bleed those millions, and it's like, oh, it's going to take us 5 years, and here is the billable hours, because everything goes to a few outsourced companies that will actually do the integration. And if you solve it, and if you know how to sell that problem to the right CIO or the CFO that cares about the budget, that's the way. I think that's the biggest challenge that they have. And then you need to break different relationships. But that's us. Sorry, enterprise sales, and
you've got to break relationships. It's not easy. It's, when you're on the block, and, as some of the names you mentioned have been around a long time. So we obviously just need to roll with it and, put some time in, build up trust.
Mm-hmm.
We picked up 8 clients so far, 2 on the reinsurance side. We've got quite a nice pipeline of business, but again, it takes time. I mean, the first clients who came on board, it really took a leap of faith from him to say, hey, listen, I'm going to run with you guys, but if you let me down, you seriously going to make an enemy out of someone. And
of course,
fortunately, that went well. But it's a time-taking. It's a process that takes time. And as you say, jumping off the moving train onto another moving train is a good analogy. But I do think if they've the right insurance carrier, if they understand their overall picture and strategy, I actually don't think it's as difficult. And the good clients we work with, they normally have one champion in that business that knows the business from beginning to end. He's understanding what's going wrong with claims, what's going wrong on underwriting, what's going right on the reinsurance side, what's going right on the billing side or whatever. And he just needs to pull all of that together. Even in a big organization, if you have that one person, it makes a world of difference. They're few and far between in insurance. It's not easy.
No, it's not. And having that, let's call it system knowledge and understanding, the guy that's been around, for 20, 30 years in the company or in the industry, ideally in the same company that, that knows from the front to cover, the cover from front to back of the book and the company, how it operates well, not the skeletons, but every screw, every bolt exists. It's process, and it's something that you see that many engineering organizations, that it's all about how do we document knowledge. But when it comes to other companies or other sectors, it's a little bit of a challenge to keep it or to understand how important it is to retain knowledge, systematic knowledge, and then figuring out who's the champion. Having said that, in insurance, luckily or surprisingly, or whatever positive sounding word that will be here, there are many people who stay with a company for a very long duration. They build a career in. I'm working on a certain deal that I'm looking for the different that falls under the chief investment officer. And you see the folks there, been with the company for 20 years. There is one of the CIOs, he's been there for 29 or 31 years. And it's like, after college started, then it's great.
But that's a good thing. It is a good thing. You just got to keep them happy, keep them motivated and happy. And so long as they're ambitious, then I think that's an awesome thing.
I wonder how we're going to see that now that kind of the gig economy is going. Yeah, we are shifting away from insurance and just thinking about the economy in a whole, because we've seen the different trends of, there is the cool stuff of gig economy, which is just marketing standoff, like we are not looking for employees, we just need contractors. And how things are kind of, the pendulum shifts back to people who are looking for employees or whatever that may be, because the gig economy or just being a contractor and being proud of not having a job it's shifting, and we see that with the different news. And again, I'm not Joe Rogan, so maybe that's a topic. Right. Maybe that's a topic that we'll have offline, because people usually tune in to hear about insurance here.
Anyway, but it's all part of the industry, and I do think Pretty much. I mean, I think everything was outsourced in the form of MGAs. I mean, underwriting expertise, market knowledge, the MGA was basically that outsourced model.
And the same thing we can say about the agencies and brokers. Originally, the broker
Yep.
was supposed to represent the client, but today we see that the agent and broker do the same job and they are motivated by this kind of the same incentives. Let me just close a deal and get the policy written and closed, and that's it. Let's bind it and move on. That's the entire.
There's blurring of lines. I mean, brokers. There's a lot of brokers that own insurance companies these days, and vice versa. And certainly there is that blurring of lines. There's the direct insurance model also.
Yeah, but when it comes to what we started this kind of topic, it's okay. How can I shift that budget to that entity? So is it the underwriting? No. The risk? No. It's like the marketing. Okay, now we're talking about distribution channels and the burden of getting the policyholder or the prospect or the client, the lead. That's on them, not on me. I'm just paying the commissions. That's the only thing. If I have a challenge and there is an overhead for that too many agents, and they are good, they are not bad. That's why I have wholesalers. They can handle it. They are going to teach them, train them, give them all kinds of different options. It's amazing how it works. And here in the US,
No, I agree with you. I think it is amazing how it works. And I think also, again, lines have just got blurred everywhere. And reinsurance brokers, a lot of that has almost been taken over in some form by fronting companies now, So as much as brokers may be encroaching on insurance companies, it's also happening the other way around.
Well, fronting companies, that's just for the fronting of the paper. Here is, what is it now? 6%? Fee for the front?
It's good. Yeah, I can be anywhere from 6 to 10% quite quickly.
10%.
Yeah,
but it used to be
absolutely.
5. Now it's wow, just for the fronting fee. That's impressive.
Yeah,
wow,
absolutely.
Ah, cool, wonderful. What else should people know about Intx?
I think. Look, we're new in this country, but we've been around a long time. We're super aggressive. We obviously, we're not just sitting here trying to do the same things that everybody else has done. I think a lot of people will, if we get in a marketing genius who comes to talk to us, they'll say, hey, your website's it's the message, we don't really understand the message, and it's quite hard to say to somebody, I promise you, no insurance company is coming to our website to buy online, going to buy some software quickly. They're not going to put their credit down. We're just trying to attract some attention. We're trying to be very different to our competitors. If you go to our competitors' websites, they are boring and they are backward and they are old, a lot like them. And I think we're trying to bring in a fresh take to this. It does need a fresh set of eyes, compared to what we've seen over the last 25 years. It's clearly not working. There's a lot of, unhappy software purchases out there. And I think we're just trying to bring in something where we bring a level of service back into this market. We've got a pretty young team. I mean, I'm the old man here. I'm coming up to 55. The next sort of oldest guy is at 33. But they're super aggressive. They're smart. One thing, I mean, you talk about young people, you can hear older guys saying, the millennials, blah, blah, blah. These guys who work for us are smart. I know. And they're smart. They're hardworking. These guys, they work harder than I work, that's for sure. And
No. Listen, hey, first of all, millennials are already old. They are in their 40s. They just reached their 40s. Even Gen Z, really, I think that they are in their 30s, maybe? Now we are dealing with...
For 20s,
what is
okay.
it? No, I think that nowadays we are dealing with Gen Z or something like that. Actually,
I don't know. I think it might be going full circle. If I look at my children, I think they're going back to Gen A. They want to drive stick shift cars and drive vehicles, and they think taking selfies is lame. So there's hope out there.
Let's see. Now I need to Google this. Gen X, that's us. Then we have millennials from 81. Then Gen Z from 97. Then Alpha from 13.
It's Alpha. I don't believe it. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Well, after Z, you go to Alpha and you finish
full circle.
Yeah, it's a full circle done. So nowadays, in the workforce, we have Gen Z and Alpha are about to finish high school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not quite finishing high school, no, because that's from 2013, you say, 2013.
Yeah, from 13 till currently going. But I'm sure that they're going to introduce beta soon enough because it's been like more than 10 years now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be by time. It should be by technology because better are the ones that are already born into the AI revolution, right? Or
Absolutely.
bubble. So if for Gen X, we were like at the crisp of analog towards digital, and internet and computers were introduced when we were in middle school, high school, millennials were born with the internet. Gen Zs were born with the phone in their hand. Yeah, no,
You're right. It's be Generation AI. Forget Generation Alpha. That's it. It's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, that. Yeah. Okay. No, we are
Hopefully,
not getting
the
old. We are
bubbles are
getting.
over. No, we're getting wise. We're getting wise.
We are getting wise indeed, indeed, indeed. Wonderful. Last thing, any tips, recommendations, or topics that people should talk about that they don't really talk about in the industry?
I think a lot of conversations are taking place. I mean, it might not be popular with people who look like me, but I think there's a lot of women coming into the insurance industry, which is a good thing. I think they've got a different take on things. I think they're able to make decisions a bit faster. And I think they're a bit more decisive and, sort of they pay a lot more attention to detail. And I'm not a screaming feminist, but I will say that it's added a bit more flavor and color to the industry, which I think is very necessary because it's a little bit old school and we definitely need a bit of change, in the industry. So long may that continue. It's a small thing, but it's working.
Yeah. And where do you see that more? Here in the US or in the more conservative Lloyd's area in the city?
I think pretty much the US is, leading the way in that regard. I think Europe, I mean, I'm just, trying to think of that, who's coming in that market. I mean, it was just noticeable to me here that there are a lot of younger sort of women coming into the industry. I found that very, very noticeable. Whether they're going to leave or not in the next 10 years, it remains to be seen. But it was noticeable how many more younger women came into the insurance industry versus in other markets in the world, in the US, that is.
Now, I know that I said, last question, but here is another one. How was ITC?
Very good, very good. I got to meet you. He introduced me to a good concept.
Done.
No, overall it was good. It went well for us. We got a lot of leads, and it's interesting. A lot of companies come to look, and they come very enthusiastic to the booth. It always happens. But out of the 50 that you get to meet and talk to in the booth, I think you probably get 3 that will narrow down into clients. We're probably down to sifting it down to 10. But out of that 10, as I say, if we end up with 3, I'll be very happy. Last year, we ended up with 1 client, and we were super happy about that. But as I say, if we get 3 very solid opportunities and, 3 of those that convert into clients, then awesome. But overall, it went very well. I enjoyed ITC. It was interesting. Same thing, lots of AI companies, lots of, interesting ideas out there. But I don't know if they'll all be there next year, but let's see.
Yeah, let's see. Wonderful. Rob, thank you very, very, very much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking with you again, and this time on the record.
Absolutely, Gilad. I really enjoyed chatting to you, as always. Always a great pleasure chatting to you. Very interesting, as always. Always making me think.
My pleasure. This is why I'm here, right? To make other people think.
Excellent.